So my first thought really is to go and see my parents, who obviously know far more about their family history than I do. They're very good at keeping kind of photos and records. My mother's father was called Godfrey. I remember him teaching me to catch. I remember playing with him in the garden, but I can't actually remember having any proper conversations. My father's father, his first name was Hubert. His second name was Ronald, so he was always known as Ron. Just a very lovely, very sort of gentle man. As far as I'm aware, he never talked about the war, but nor did my mum's dad. I've always assumed it was just one of those things that you just, in that generation, you just simply didn't talk about.
Hello, Pete. Great to see you. Come on in.
Where are we going?
In there.
In here.
That's a photograph of my father, Godfrey.
Oh, right, okay.
When he was in the army, in the First
So how
World War.
old was he then?
Well, I should think that he's about 19, perhaps, or 20. He was in France throughout the war.
Presumably he would have gone through some of the more horrible...
I think he did. But whatever it was, marked him dreadfully in a sort of subterranean way.
Yes.
So that when he became really old and not very well, I mean, he became confused and so on, he thought that he was reliving many of those war experiences. And it was horrific, really.
And is there any way of finding out what he did do? I mean, who would know?
He talked to my sister, Margaret, quite a lot, I think, when she was grown up and I had left home. And she might be able to tell you quite a bit more about his experiences, I think.
And this is Grandad?
That's my father, yes. Your other grandfather. He was born in 1899.
Near Sheffield, yeah?
Yes, the village called Wales, which is actually near Sheffield, yes.
Do you know what he did in there?
No, I mean, we build up a picture from the photos that we've got, but he never talked about it at all. His war experience was really quite short because he, I think he'd only been in France for a few days when he got wounded. And I remember, I mean, huge scars down the whole of his side, which of course were there forever, where he'd taken shrapnel on board. That's your granddad as well, and about before that. Yes, that's right. He'd been a grammar school boy, so he was naturally looked on as someone who might make an officer. He got his officer training at Cambridge before he went over to France. And this photograph here, as you'll see, we'll both recognise that. That's on the river at, well, I'm assuming on the Cam at Cambridge. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's number 5. That's him.
And do you know anything about this sort of period at Cambridge officer training?
I don't know what he was doing now, and I don't know how long he was there either. We've got a photograph here of his mother and his father. Edie was a...
You look quite like her, in fact.
Well, they call it the genetics, don't they? She was married to John, my grandfather. He was a miner. And when she had children of her own, she was determined that they should get a good education because she did not want her children to go down the pit.
It's remarkable, really, that he was the son of a miner, and yet, when the First World War was on, he was an officer. But before that, it was the fact that he went to a grammar school. I imagine in a pit village south of Sheffield, that was very unusual. I guess that needs to start in South Yorkshire.
Kiveton Colliery, where Hugh's great-grandfather John Dennis worked in the 1900s, dominated the villages of Wales and Kiveton Park. At its height, it employed over 1,000 people. It was finally closed in 1994, and the buildings were demolished. Hugh is meeting Eric Chambers of the Kiveton Park and Wales History Society.
Very pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So what have you found out?
Well, just take a look at this.
And this is what? This is
the census from 1901 for Wales and Kiveton Park.
Okay, and so that's John Dennis. So that he is my great-grandfather?
Great-grandfather, yes.
Because his wife Edith is here, and they have two sons, and this son here, Hubert R, R standing for Ronald, is my grandfather. So John Dennis was 29.
Correct,
in 1901, and he was male, which is good and a relief.
It really is, yes.
And he was what does that say? So it's a hewer.
Hewer.
So coal miner hewer, which was what?
He actually worked on the coal face with a pick and shovel, actually cutting coal, and he would work an 8-hour shift on the coal face, and he would be expected to mine about 17 tonnes altogether in one shift. To actually do that, to mine 17 tonnes of coal in any conditions, but to actually do it under those circumstances was
it's not a job
amazing.
for the claustrophobic, is it? I mean,
no, it isn't, no.
Wow.
Coal hewers in collieries like Kiveton worked in treacherous conditions. Almost every miner could expect to suffer an injury or experience a roof fall over the course of his career. And deaths underground were frequent occurrences. Lung disease caused by coal dust was common, and there was little welfare and no pensions for those unable to work. But in villages like Kiveton Park and Wales, there were few other opportunities for employment.
And would all these men, I mean, all these families would have worked down the pit, would they? Or
well,
was it still
if you have a look,
agricultural? Okay.
this is another part of the census which give you an idea of the occupations.
So this family, the Turners, the head of the family is a hewer, and then a pony driver in the pit, and a pony driver in the pit, and a colliery engine driver, coal mine plate layer, pony driver coal mine, Frank Robinson, 16, pony driver. So you start quite young, don't you? So he's 15 and 14.
Tends to be a job that they started them off on.
And how young could you be?
In 1901, 14 was about the age.
So my great-uncle Jack is 3 at this point, my granddad is 2. So there's got 10 more years. We're 10 years away from
that's it, yes.
These children having to go
That's correct, yes.
Well,
in 1901, over 60,000 boys under the age of 16 worked in British coal mines, nearly 9,000 of them in Yorkshire. And that year in the United Kingdom, 66 boys were killed in mining accidents.
it's astonishing, isn't it, when you think about how young 13 is. That's kind of frightening, really, isn't it?
Well, it's a job I couldn't have done at all. I managed to get out through education, and my father always told me he didn't want me to work down the pit. I went to grammar school.
Which is what my grandfather did.
Yes. The way out was education, if he could get it.
I think coming here you get a real sense of why my great-grandparents were determined that their children wouldn't go down the pit. You know, childhood, in very simple terms, childhood ended really early. It was by no means inevitable that he was going to go to grammar school, and in fact it was much more likely, I guess, that he would have gone down the pit at 14. I know my grandfather made it to grammar school, but I don't know how he did that. That's as much as I know, so I need to find out about that.
Hugh has come to Wales Primary School to meet social historian Professor Keith Laybourne.
I mentioned there'll be something you might be interested in.
Yeah.
This is the honours board of the school. It's taken from the old school put in here.
Yeah.
Is there anything that attracts your attention?
1910. Dennis Ronald is my grandfather. He got a scholarship.
He got a scholarship.
Wales Educational Trust.
Yeah.
So what did that mean?
Well, it was the local landowners who raised money to allow bright working class kids from this district to go to grammar school.
So he did well?
He did very well. To win a trust award, or indeed a county award, you are one in about 100 children. That's
okay.
It's that rare. And in a sense, if you were a son of a miner, probably even rarer.
In the early 20th century, secondary education was largely provided by public and fee-paying grammar schools, attended almost exclusively by children from the upper and middle classes. Less than 5% of working-class children made it to secondary school. But secondary education was expanding. The government began to help fund the building of a wave of new grammar schools. In return for this state aid, more places would be made available to children from poorer backgrounds. These places were awarded by scholarship, and to win one, Ronald Dennis had to show exceptional ability.
Well, here's the exam that
I feel slightly nervous, if I'm honest.
grandfather would have sat. But remember, this is a 10 and 11-year-old child that's probably taking this.
Here's arithmetic paper. Postcards already stamped can be bought at the rate of 11 for 6 pence. Similar postcards unstamped can be bought at the rate of 25 for 1 penny. Explain which is cheaper, to buy postcards already stamped or postcards and stamps separately. It doesn't tell you how much stamps were.
And that's
so
the problem,
that's
right?
almost impossible.
It's almost
to know,
impossible, because I tried working that out yesterday and I couldn't.
We'll have to phone the post office and find out.
Our collective ignorance is quite profound, really, isn't it?
You see, that's the kind of question that most 10 or 11-year-olds would just go,
Yeah.
So this is genuinely difficult, isn't it?
It is very, very difficult for a 10, 11-year-old child.
Do you know anything about the grammar school that he ended up at?
Well, it was Woodhouse Grammar School, opened in 1909, designed for 200 pupils, but was demolished recently. The next thing we have is a picture from about 1915, thereabouts. See if you can spot...
Oh, this was my grandfather. Can I find him? Is that? Yeah, that's definitely him.
And I believe you've got an Uncle Jack, or a great...
I have, yeah. Is that Jack? It was a uniform and a half, wasn't it? And if you were, I mean, you know, kids taunt other kids. If you were the two kids from the mining village who'd gone off to the grammar school and you came home every day wearing this sort of expensive looking...
I'd stick together if I were them.
Really? I mean, it would have been...
I think the real problem I think you faced at the turn of the century is this class situation. You are actually moving from being working class into a middle class environment. You're not accepted by one, and you're beginning to almost alienate yourself from another. I think that's a real difficulty. Because you get it from both ends, really. Remember, you're not really part of the middle class, but you're no longer part of the working class.
Yeah. Both he and his brother, Jack, both went to grammar school, which kind of set the course for where I am now, if you like. If no one had got them in, or if they hadn't got themselves in, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
Ronald Dennis left grammar school with expectations of a professional career and a bright future. But the world he found himself in was in turmoil. The First World War was raging in Europe, and thousands of young British men had already been killed. Ronald's plans were put on hold, and in January 1917, he joined the army.
The next thing we definitely know about my grandfather is that he ended up in officer training in Cambridge. So I guess the next step is to maybe get to Cambridge and see what there is there.